Hi and welcome back to another chat with Tony. If you haven't seen any of the previous videos, Tony is a friend that I met actually in China. He's lived in China for a significant amount of time, I think 15 plus years. I've been going to China for a long time, lived there for sort of half of the last 15 years and permanently for the last 5. And we're currently outside China. We've caught up with each other here in Thailand. And we just thought we'd do a few videos sort of talking about our experiences in China and of China. And in this video I want to talk about the meeting between Olaf Should of Germany and Xi Jinping of China. And the reason why I want to talk about that is it seems that Germany have finally started to realise that it's not a good idea to follow American foreign policy as regards to China. I somewhat personally think Germany have been thrown under the bus, as have the UK and other European countries, by the USA over the Ukraine thing. It's fairly obvious that it was the USA and the UK who were behind the sabotage on the Nord Stream pipelines. That's not a 100% definite, but all the evidence points to that so far, and I believe Russia are actually going to come out and divulge some more evidence in the very near future. They've already called the British ambassador in to explain himself over that. But getting back to the core subject of this video, so before Olaf Should, the German guy, come to visit Xi Jinping, he was given a kind of a warning by America of not to get too close to China. And then when he arrived in China, Xi gave him a bit of a warning that he needs to be very, very careful how he treads, because he's burnt all his bridges with Russia. And now you see the German economy is in some sort of quite big trouble, really. They have very high inflation. Their manufacturing is pretty shot because their energy costs have gone up by about 5 times. Of course, America are loving it because America are now selling LNG to Germany at 5 times what Germany would pay for gas from Russia. And I just think that by following American foreign policy, that Germany have put themselves into a very, very difficult position economically. But it's very interesting, when Should actually visited China, he brought a large delegation of business leaders with him, people like, you know, the CEOs and that of people like BMW, Mercedes, all the big companies. And apparently, from what I hear, a report that there's many more companies wanting to join in this delegation to come to China, but they only had a certain amount of spaces, so they picked all the CEOs and leaders from the largest companies. And something that also broke in the news was that BMW are going to stop manufacturing the electric Mini in the UK and move production to China. And I believe it's BASF, one of the huge German chemical companies, are also investing in a new plant in China.
It doesn't surprise me. For several years, whilst I was out there, and I'm not sure if you're aware, I was working for a vehicle company that was supplying parts for BMW out in China, and my task was to, in essence, to teach business English to the company in order that they could communicate better on the internet and over the phone, etc. When they are talking about parts, you know, vehicle parts and sales and numbers of sales, and also distribution. So it was a very interesting period for me. At this moment in time, I mean, how moving more manufacturing out to China from Germany, I don't know how it's going to go, because on a political sense, it's a kind of a new thing for me. I don't really...
Yeah, well, something really interesting. Yeah. Should penned an opinion piece in a, I don't know if it's a Telegraph or the Guardian, or it might have been one of the big German newspapers like De Welt. But he penned this opinion piece, and it was the first time a European leader has recognised that we now move into a multipolar world. where if you look for the past 50 years, it's been and America want to keep it as a unipolar world where they control everything. Yeah, they want to make all the decisions, they want to make all the rules. But Schultz acknowledged in that piece that we no longer have a unipolar world. We move into a multipolar world. And he said in that piece, he wants to work with all of the people, not just, America want everybody just to be with them and shun China.
Yeah.
Well, we've seen what's happened to Europe by taking that American policy. They've dug themselves into a very deep hole. And, I wonder if ever Europe can be competitive on a manufacturing front again. So just take the example of this Europe sort of sanctioning Russian energy, right? So what's happened? The cost of energy in Europe has more than tripled. The cost of energy in China and India has dropped because they've done deals. You have Iran doing a massive deal now with Russia to buy energy. So these countries reducing their costs while Europe are increasing their costs. So how can Europe remain competitive? It's not possible.
I can only agree. I can only agree. I can't compete with what you're saying.
They're digging themselves into a huge hole, and by if they follow along with what the US want them to do and cut China off, that's going to make their situation even worse. And it's interesting we having Schultz sort of rebel against that, and now Macron in France is pushing back against that. Are they finally seeing what the USA is about? And the USA is about themselves.
Well, so that leads me to, this isn't a Joe Rogan interview, but it seems like I'm going to interview Lee to a degree now. So
that's okay.
Well, okay. So what got us here?
Well, what got us here was that the US, through NATO, pushed Russia. And Russia finally snapped and responded.
You want about the conflict now?
The conflict.
Okay, all
which led to the sanctions of pretty much energy. To Germany, Russia supplied 40% of their gas. Now, if you have a supplier that supplies 40% of your gas energy, you don't cut them off. Right. From the day Nord Stream 2 was conceived, America's ambition was to stop it, and they've finally done that. But look at the mess it's now left Germany and other parts of Europe in.
Right, so taking the situation as it is now, what's the solution?
Well, for Europe, there isn't a solution. The only solution...
Oh, there has to be a solution.
Well, there is a solution. The solution is that Europeans need to sit down with Russia, sit down with Ukraine, and negotiate a solution that makes Russia happy, that makes Ukraine happy, and that makes Europe happy. Then, Russia have already said they're happy to resume supplies of energy to Europe. But you know what? That won't happen. They were very close to coming to a peaceful settlement in the very early days. But you know who torpedoed it? The UK and America. Boris Johnson apparently made a special journey to Ukraine to tell Zelensky to reject any peace deal. You see, I believe that America doesn't want peace in Ukraine. We now see articles appearing in the press in the last few days that they want to get Ukraine negotiating.
Yeah.
But that's only so, I believe, they can say, oh, look, they're negotiating so we can keep funding them. I really don't believe they want peace. America don't want peace because when there's peace in the world, America won't make money. Their military-industrial complex in the USA is one of the largest drivers of the American economy, together with large pharma and medical insurance and large tech. It's one of the big four. So if the world was peaceful, what are they going to do? How are the politicians going to get all those millions of dollars to finance the election campaigns from military-industrial CEOs? And where are the Pentagon going to put all those multi-billion-dollar orders for more weapons and more armaments and more military? I mean, the American military budget this year was almost $1 trillion. $1 trillion, almost. Think of the good you could do with that money.
Yeah.
But no, not America. You know, we want to continue to cause chaos. Even Biden a few weeks ago, Biden's going to liberate the Iranian people. What is that? Just like he liberated the Afghanis and the Iraqis and the Syrians and the Libyans. Oh, great examples of liberating the people there. You know, he just put those countries into complete chaos. And now he wants to do the same with Iran. I become speechless, you know.
It's hard to look at any conflict or even economical problem in the world without seeing somewhere, sometimes in small print, sometimes in large print, America.
There's involvement, yeah.
There's an involvement with every piece of chaos in the world.
Yeah.
Even probably if you go back, 50 years, historically, that's always the case. So is that because people listen to Americans? Are the politicians particularly good, or have they got such a great wealth, or is it their military power that says, we will defend you if you do this?
It's down to their military power,
right, okay.
Isn't it?
And then the other point is, and we sometimes say we know a little bit about China because we lived there, 15, 16 years. So there's a good chance we know something about China than someone who never has.
Of course.
Right, and most Americans don't know, have never been, if I had to guess, never been to...
well, actually, many Americans have not travelled outside the USA.
Yeah, that's right.
You know, and it's funny how they can have such a... Obviously, they form their opinion from the media, and that media is such a false narrative that's pushed in the Western press about China. I mean, it really is. I mean, it's laughable sometimes.
And a lot of Americans now don't even know where Ukraine is.
Yeah.
They know it's somewhere over there.
Yeah, but they're not quite sure.
No.
Yeah. They can spend, they can send tens of billions of dollars there.
Yeah.
It's just...
Well, they are starting to question. I mean, people like Tucker Carlson, they are starting to question, why are we sending this much money abroad and this amount of military?
But this is exactly why now you're seeing that the American administration are pushing this, like, oh, can you sit down and pretend you're negotiating a peaceful settlement? Then it's just, oh, look, they're trying to reach peace. But in the meantime, we can still keep sending billions of dollars to them, Because if they don't, then, like you say, American people are going to say, well, why do we keep sending all this money to Ukraine? When you've got, what is it, I don't know, X amount of million people in extreme poverty in the US. The US is meant to be the richest economy in the world. Yet they have huge amount of people in poverty, homeless.
Where does that richest economy come from? Is it from tax?
Well, I question this because I actually think China's economy is already bigger than America because the way GDP is counted. So
yes.
let me give you an example. I go for an ultrasound scan.
Mm-hmm.
It costs me $30 in China.
Yeah.
That same ultrasound scan would probably cost me $300 to $400 in America.
Yeah.
So the same thing adds $400 to American GDP, but $35 to Chinese GDP.
Yeah.
And the medical business in America and that's just one thing.
Yeah.
So you've got this. So you need to go to this purchasing power parity.
Mm-hmm.
And if you look at purchasing power parity, the Chinese economy is already bigger than the US economy, and that's more of a true measure, So I think I really think it's very, very interesting. But I think in conclusion, I think Schultz is the first European leader to start acknowledging that China and Russia will play a part in setting how the world operates, and I think that that is going to piss off America incredibly. For him to come out and say that he's acknowledging it's a multipolar world and not a unipolar world must be a huge shock to the people in government in the USA.
It is, and I think the outcome of that can't really be answered until the discussion between Xi Jinping and MBS has taken place.
Yeah.
I think that's going to happen.
Yeah, well, that's the next video, so stay tuned for that one because we're going to talk about how I believe that Saudi Arabia and other countries in the Middle East are starting to pivot towards China and Southeast Asia. and away from their long-time allies, the USA. So stay tuned for that one. But in the meantime, if you did like this video, give it a thumbs up. Get your comments down in that comment section. I hope this is a lively one because we're raising a lot of very interesting points here. But as always, for now, take care.
Thank you.